Have you ever stayed late at school, office, or hospital when the halls were empty and every sound felt louder than it should? Imagine the only person left behind is the janitor, the one who sees what others don't. What if I told you some janitors witness things so terrifying they wish they had never turned on the lights that night? Welcome to tonight's chilling tale. These aren't made-up ghost stories. These are disturbing, real accounts of janitors who worked in the dead of night, and what they saw will haunt you long after this video ends. It always starts the same way. The echo of shoes on a linoleum hallway, the faint buzz of fluorescent lights, and that heavy silence that makes every little sound feel louder than it should. Imagine being the only one in an entire school after hours. The classrooms empty, the laughter and chaos of the day long gone, replaced with nothing but shadows stretching across the walls. That's the reality for most janitors. They are the unseen watchers of the night, the ones who clean the mess after everyone else has gone home. But sometimes the mess left behind is not gum under desks or trash cans overflowing. Sometimes what lingers is something much darker. He was assigned to the East Wing, a part of the building most students rarely went to during the day. Old classrooms, storage rooms, and long stretches of corridor that felt colder than the rest of the school. His mop bucket squeaked as he rolled it down the hall, the sound bouncing back at him as though the building itself was mocking his presence. He had worked this job long enough to know that schools had their own personality at night. They seemed to breathe, to expand and contract in ways that didn't feel natural. Pipes groaned, doors clicked, air vents sighed, and yet all of it still felt wrong. That's when he noticed it. A door he had never seen open before. Rusty hinges, a broken padlock hanging loose as though someone had recently forced it. At first, he thought it was just another storage closet, the kind that kept outdated textbooks or broken chairs. But something about it pulled his attention, as if the darkness behind that cracked door was staring back at him. He placed his mop aside, his hand trembling as he pushed it open. The smell hit him immediately, damp, stale, like wet concrete that had never dried. The air was colder here, unnaturally colder, and he could see his breath fogging in front of him. Inside was a narrow stairwell leading down. His flashlight flickered as though it didn't want to reveal what was waiting below. Every step echoed. Every breath seemed to grow louder in his ears, until he reached the bottom where a basement stretched out in front of him. Old desks stacked in piles, chairs broken and tossed in corners, shelves thick with dust that clung to the air like smoke. He swept his flashlight across the walls, and that's when he froze. Words, not painted, not drawn, scratched, carved deep into the concrete. Hundreds of them, overlapping, desperate, jagged lines gouged by trembling hands. He leaned closer to read them, and his stomach tightened. They weren't random scribbles. They were warnings. Over and over again, the same phrase repeated, "Don't let them out, don't let them out." The janitor's heart pounded in his chest. He told himself it was just vandalism from kids who had snuck in years ago. But deep inside, he knew no teenager would spend hours upon hours carving words into solid concrete, words etched with such desperation that they cut deep enough to leave dust still, scattered beneath. He stepped back, his foot crunching on glass. The sound shot through the silence like a gunshot. He swung his flashlight toward the noise, but nothing was there. And then he heard it, a dragging sound. Slow, deliberate, like something pulling itself across the floor just beyond the stacks of furniture. His throat tightened. His legs refused to move, but his body screamed to run. He aimed the flashlight toward the source, and for a split second the beam caught something. Not human, not animal. A shape low to the ground, limbs bent wrong, moving back into the shadows as though it had been caught too soon. His flashlight flickered violently, plunging him into near darkness, and in that dim glow he could swear the carvings on the wall looked fresher, newer, as though they had been made not years ago, but moments ago. His breath came in sharp bursts, the dragging sound now closer, scraping across the concrete floor, circling him slowly, deliberately. He tried to step back, but the clutter of broken desks blocked his path. The walls seemed to close in, the words, "Don't let them out," pressing down on him, surrounding him, swallowing every thought except one. What if he had already let something out just by opening that door? A chill swept across his neck, the unmistakable feeling of being watched. He swung the light upward, and for just a blink, he saw handprints smeared along the ceiling, fresh streaks dragging along the dusty beams as though something had been crawling directly above him, keeping pace with every step he took. His hands shook so violently he almost dropped the flashlight, its weak beam dancing across the shadows, never quite catching the figure but always sensing it just out of view. Then came the whisper. Not a voice from ahead, not a voice from behind. A whisper that came from everywhere at once. Low, raspy, repeating the same words scratched into the walls, but this time not a warning. This time it was a threat. The voice rasped in unison with the scratching marks around him, a chorus of voices, each one overlapping the other. Don't let them out. Don't let them out. Don't let them out. His chest tightened, his skin prickled with cold sweat, and he realized those weren't words carved by someone trying to keep others safe. They were words of someone who failed, someone who had been down here before, who tried to hold something back, and couldn't. The dragging grew louder, now circling faster, the sound of fingernails clawing against the concrete floor, pulling closer and closer. The janitor raised his flashlight again, but the bulb popped, plunging him into complete darkness. In that suffocating black, he heard the sound stop, only inches away from him. Hospitals are supposed to be places of healing, places where life begins, where hope is restored. But when night falls and the corridors empty out, hospitals become something else entirely. The smell of antiseptic lingers heavier. The hum of machines feels louder, and the silence between beeps and footsteps becomes unbearable. And in that silence, the morgue waits. He was used to cleaning every part of the building. Hallways, patient rooms, waiting areas. He could handle them all. But every time the schedule placed him in the basement levels where the morgue rested, he felt his stomach tighten. It wasn't just the thought of the bodies lying in the drawers, it was the atmosphere. The temperature was always colder, unnaturally cold, even when the rest of the hospital sweltered in summer heat. The walls seemed to hold secrets, and the air carried whispers no one wanted to acknowledge. It was well past midnight when he wheeled his cleaning cart into the elevator and pressed the button for the lowest floor. The doors opened with a mechanical groan, revealing a hallway dimly lit, the kind of lighting that seemed intentional, like the place wanted to stay half-hidden. The wheels of his cart squeaked with every push, echoing down the corridor as though the sound belonged to someone else trailing him. When he reached the morgue, the heavy double doors creaked open slowly. The air that escaped was biting cold, wrapping around him like a warning. He pushed inside, the fluorescent lights flickering overhead, revealing rows of steel drawers. Each drawer, he knew, held a body. Lifeless, unmoving, silent. But silence doesn't always mean peace. He moved carefully, his eyes darting to every shadow. He began mopping the tiled floor, the rhythmic swish of the mop echoing against the walls. Then he froze. Because beneath that sound, something else rose. Faint, almost impossible to hear, whispers. He turned his head sharply, but there was no one there. He told himself it was his mind playing tricks. Hospitals were full of strange noises. Pipes, vents, machinery. That's all it was. But as he dipped the mop again, the whispers grew clearer. Not random, not mechanical, but words. Low, urgent, voices overlapping one another like a crowd murmuring from behind a locked door. His throat went dry. He looked toward the rows of drawers. Every single one was closed tight. Every single one was still. He forced himself to keep moving, but his pace quickened, his mop strokes sloppy, desperate to be done. Then came the sound that turned his fear into something else. Metal, scraping, slow, uneasy. He whipped his head toward it and saw one of the drawers. Sliding open. The screech of steel grinding against steel cut through the silence like a scream. His knees weakened, his grip tightening on the mop handle until his knuckles turned white. The drawer slid halfway out, revealing the outline of a body beneath a white sheet. He stared, waiting for his mind to wake him, for the noise to prove itself a trick. But then the sheet moved. Just slightly. The faintest rise and fall, as if something underneath had taken a shallow breath. His chest heaved. Sweat trickled down his back despite the freezing air. He stepped backward, 1 foot at a time, eyes locked on the motionless shape in front of him. The whispers rose again, louder now, not one voice but many, rushing over him like a wave. They didn't sound like prayers, not like cries for help. They sounded like invitations, calls, pleas for him to stay. He shook his head, muttering to himself, "It's not real, it's not real." But even he couldn't believe his own words. He abandoned the mop, his body moving on instinct, rushing to the elevator at the far end of the hall. The wheels of his cart screeched as he shoved it aside and pressed the button over and over again. The hum of machinery above told him it was coming too slow, far too slow. Behind him, the whispers grew into a chorus, layered, desperate, beckoning him back. Then the footsteps began. Slow, heavy, measured, each one echoing off the tile, growing closer and closer. He refused to turn around, but the air shifted as if someone had stepped directly into the room with him. He jabbed the elevator button again and again, the light above the door crawling downward as if taunting him. The footsteps stopped. Silence swallowed the room for a single heartbeat. Then 3 sharp knocks pounded against the morgue doors he had left open. He turned his head in terror, but there was nothing there. The doors stood wide, the hallway beyond empty, yet the knocking came again, louder, closer, vibrating through the walls. His heart hammered as the elevator doors finally slid open with a groan. He stumbled inside, slamming the button for the top floor. The doors began to close, painfully slow, as though the building itself wanted to keep him trapped. And in that final sliver of space before they shut completely, he saw it. A shadow stretching unnaturally long across the floor, a figure standing where no figure had been before. Head tilted, unmoving, watching. The doors sealed shut, the hum of the elevator rising around him, but his relief didn't last. Because as the elevator ascended, the knocking followed. This time, it wasn't against the morgue doors, it was against the elevator walls. Slow, deliberate, from the other side of the steel. Office towers always look majestic from the outside at night, their glass windows glowing against the dark sky, lights flickering floor by floor like stars captured in steel. But what most people don't realize is that inside those towers, when the last worker leaves, when the computers power down, when silence replaces the rhythm of the day, the building becomes something else. Empty, cold, echoing, and the only one left to wander those endless hallways is the janitor. He had worked in that skyscraper for years, and he knew its patterns better than anyone. The top floors, with their boardrooms and executive offices, were always deserted by 8 o'clock sharp. No one worked that late, not unless there was a crisis. But on this night, as he pushed his vacuum toward the elevator, he noticed something strange. The top floor light on the building's directory was still glowing, as if someone had never left. He didn't think much of it. People forget, he told himself. Maybe a manager left their light on. Maybe a security guard did rounds. He convinced himself it was nothing. When the elevator doors slid open, he stepped into the executive level. The entire floor was lined with tall windows, the city sprawled beneath like a glittering sea of lights. The air felt heavier here, thick with silence. He began vacuuming, the mechanical hum filling the empty space. That's when he saw him. A man, sitting at one of the desks at the far end of the room, his head bowed, papers scattered in front of him, a dim lamp casting shadows across his figure. The janitor hesitated. It wasn't unusual to find someone working late, but this man looked wrong. Too still, too silent. He called out, asking if he should skip cleaning that office until later. No reply. The man didn't move. He pushed the vacuum closer, repeating himself louder this time. The figure remained motionless, shoulders hunched, head bent as though studying something unseen. He felt a chill creep up his arms. Something in his gut screamed that this wasn't right. He turned the vacuum off, and in the sudden silence, the atmosphere thickened. He took a few cautious steps forward. That's when the man lifted his head. Slowly, painfully slowly, and the janitor's breath caught in his throat. The face staring back at him wasn't normal. It was pale, unnaturally pale, skin stretched tight across sharp bones, and the eyes, completely black. Not pupils, not irises, just void, empty sockets of darkness swallowing any trace of humanity. The janitor stumbled back, his hand fumbling for the light switch, but before he touched it, the lamp on the desk flickered violently, then went out, plunging the room into darkness. The windows now reflected nothing but the faint city glow. He could see his own trembling silhouette, but behind it stood another. A tall, thin outline standing where the desk had been, unmoving, head tilted just slightly to the side like a predator studying prey. He staggered backward, his shoes squeaking against the polished floor. His eyes darted around for another source of light, but the only illumination came from the blinking red dot of a computer monitor in standby. He turned to run, but the silence was broken by footsteps. Heavy, measured, following him with precision. He didn't dare look back. He darted into the stairwell, the heavy door slamming shut behind him, but the sound of footsteps echoed on the other side, keeping pace with every frantic beat of his heart. He ran down the stairs, gripping the railing, nearly tripping over himself, yet the rhythm of those steps never faltered, never grew distant. When he burst through another door into a lower floor, the offices were pitch black, save for the faint glow of the emergency exit signs. He froze, listening. Nothing. Silence stretched so long that he began to think he had outrun it. Then he saw it again, at the far end of the hall. The same figure, standing perfectly still, just barely illuminated by the green glow of the exit sign, its head still tilted, its body unnaturally stiff, its eyes invisible but felt, boring into him across the distance. The janitor's breath came in ragged gasps. He whispered prayers under his breath as he backed away, but the figure didn't move toward him. Not with footsteps. Not with any sound at all. Instead, with every blink, every split second his eyes shut, the figure grew closer. One blink, it was halfway down the hall. Another blink, it stood directly outside the room he had just entered. His body stiffened. His throat refused to scream. He darted sideways into another office, slamming the door and locking it. He pressed his back against the wall, heart pounding so violently he thought it might shatter his chest. The silence pressed against his ears, deafening. Then came the sound that froze him completely. The soft click of the door handle turning. Slowly. Testing. The lock rattled gently, patiently. Whoever, whatever it wasn't in a hurry. It knew he was trapped. He grabbed a chair and shoved it under the handle, his hands shaking, his palms slick with sweat. Then came the tapping. Not on the door, on the glass window behind him. He spun around, and through the window that overlooked the dark city, he saw it. A reflection that didn't match his own. Taller, darker. Standing behind him, its eyes two hollow voids, unblinking, unending, staring into him as though it had always been there. The tapping grew louder, more insistent, the glass trembling as cracks spiderwebbed across its surface. His breath turned shallow, panic clawing at his chest, the sound of shattering imminent. And in that moment, as the glass began to groan under the pressure, he realized the truth whispered among the building. Older staff. The top floor wasn't empty, after all. Someone had died there years ago, an employee who never clocked out. And some workers, they said, never leave. 3 janitors, 3 different places. a school basement, a hospital morgue, and an office tower. Ordinary buildings we walk through every single day. Yet when the lights go out, when the crowds leave, when silence takes over, these places become something else. Think about it. Schools that hold the echoes of every child who ever walked through them, hospitals that carry both the first and final breaths of countless lives, offices that see years of ambition, failure, and even tragedy. Who stays behind when no one else is there? The janitor, the unseen witness, the one who knows the secrets of empty hallways, who feels the weight of every shadow, who cleans the mess that no one dares to acknowledge. And these stories remind us of something terrifying. Not every silence is empty. Not every shadow is harmless. Not every building is ever truly vacant. Because when the world leaves, when darkness settles in, something else might stay behind. Watching, waiting, following. So the next time you walk through a school at dusk, or hear the silence of a hospital at night, or see the glow of a lone office window high above the city, remember these janitors and the things they saw, because they didn't just witness the unexplainable, they survived it. But the real question is, if you were in their shoes, alone in the dead of night, would you survive too?